Hey guys, welcome back to the Speaker's Edge podcast, the podcast specifically designed to help you to learn from some of the world's very best speakers and communicators so that you can master your message and inspire your audience every single time you speak. I'm your host for this podcast, Roddy Galbraith, and I'm delighted you've chosen to join us today. And I think you've picked a great episode to tune into. Welcome if this is the first episode you've listened to, because today we're going to be talking about the number one tip that all pro speakers use to massively increase the value they deliver for their audience. So it's a great episode to tune into. But before we get into that, if you haven't downloaded the companion resources, then go to maxwellleadership.com/the Speaker's Edge and you can download the resources. We'd love it if you rate and review the show as well. So what are we talking about today then? Well, we're talking about the most important thing you can do as a communicator to add value to your audience. Now, I'm taking for granted that you've got a great message. John says content is king, and I'm taking it for granted that you've got something to say. You've got to have something to say. Don't stand up to speak until you've got something to say. And when you've said it, then, of course, sit down. We've talked about the importance of that and the efficiency of delivering that nugget to the audience in previous episodes. But it's more than just having something to say. If it was just having something to say, it would be easy and everyone would be a great communicator. There's more to it than that. So you've got to have something to say, but you've got to facilitate the process of the audience receiving that. Facilitate the process of them actually getting what it is you're trying to say. Because it's not about you saying it, it's about them getting it, isn't it? It's about them accepting it and you helping them. So there's a process to that, and we need to assist that process. That's where the value really comes in. And so the first thing you have to have, if you think about it, is you have to have the audience's attention. If you haven't got their attention, it doesn't matter how good your message is. If they're not listening to it, it doesn't matter. It's over, isn't it? It's like a book. Imagine you've got a great book, but no one opens it. It doesn't matter what's inside if they don't open it. It doesn't matter how good it is. It's as if there's nothing in it. So we've got to grab the audience's attention. But then it's not enough just to grab the audience's attention. We've got to hold the audience's attention all the way through our message. We want them leaning in, and rather than kind of sitting back in judgment, we want them leaning in, open to receiving our message. So they choose whether or not they're going to listen to you. And not just listen to you, they choose whether they're going to let you in. If they do listen to you, and not just let you in, but do they agree with you? Because if they want to, they can shut you out very easily. And it may even appear that they're listening. John says they can be looking at you, they can be nodding and taking notes and still be thinking about something else. So we need them to listen to us. We want them to kind of soften up a little bit, open up a little bit and let us in. And ideally, we want them to consider the ideas that we're sharing with them, not to oppose them and look for reasons why we don't know what we're talking about. So using humor is a great way to get them on our side. Using humor disengages the ego, Les Brown says. So rather than sitting back in judgment, then they're opening up and leaning in, and they're somewhat disarmed. That critical conscious mind is parked a little bit, and they're just enjoying listening to us, enjoying the experience. So humor disengages the ego. Humor softens the audience up, if you like. John says it's impossible not to be connected with your audience when they're laughing with you. So you've got a message that you want to share, you've got some information, you've got some education that you want to help them with. Humor can be the oil in the wheels of that education. So humor is a great way to get the audience to pay attention to what it is we're saying and to stay with us all the way through our message. Now, when we're talking about humor, we're not just talking about one-liners. So there's a difference between telling jokes and using humor appropriately as an integral part of our message. So a guy walks into an army surplus store and says, "Have you got any of those camouflage jackets?" And the guy says, "Yeah, I've got loads, but I can't find them." So one-liners, it always makes me laugh, that joke. One-liners can be useful in a social setting, but you don't want to make that a key part of your presentation. It has to be more integrated than that. Guy gets a call from his doctor, and the doctor says, "I've got some bad news and some very bad news." And the guy says, "Go on then, give me the bad news." And he says, "Unfortunately, you've only got 24 hours to live." And he says, "Oh my goodness, what could possibly be worse than that?" And the doctor says, "Well, unfortunately, I couldn't get hold of you yesterday." I love that one as well. So it doesn't matter how funny they are. It doesn't matter whether you enjoy them. If the audience feels like, what is he doing? Why are you telling me these jokes? Then it's not going to work. It needs to be more integrated into your presentation. So if it fits with a point, and I've tried that one actually to squeeze it into presentations, that it doesn't matter how bad things are, things can always get worse. It doesn't mean just because things are bad that they're going to turn around on their own. They're not necessarily. It doesn't matter how bad they are, they can always get worse. I'll give you an example. So it kind of can work, but it needs to be even more integrated, I think. In fact, Chris Hodges, many of you know Chris Hodges, we went to Israel with John in 2000, a group of us. Chris Hodges was one of the people in the party, him and his wife. And Chris stood up in the bus one day and was sharing stories, and he actually told this joke about the guy who gets a call from his doctor. But the way that Chris uses those types of kind of cheap jokes, if you like, that lots of people have heard. The way that Chris shares them is that has a particular character that he often uses with his audience, and that particular character is the butt of different jokes and does silly things and makes mistakes. So he's using the same character to tell these different jokes. And so it was this particular character that gets a call from his doctor. So it fits Chris's delivery, it fits his style, it fits his audience, so it's a little more relevant, and the audience know what to expect when this particular character pops up as a butt of all of these jokes. So it works a little bit better. So the more relevant you can make it, the better it's going to fit, the more powerful it's going to be. You don't want the audience thinking, I didn't come to a stand-up comedy show. You want them thinking, oh, this is really great stuff. And the experience that delivers that kind of goes unnoticed. They're just enjoying themselves, but they're not thinking about it. They're not thinking, oh, you're trying to make me laugh with your jokes. So the more integrated, the better. I remember years ago, 20 years ago now, Susan and I had kind of had a talk about like, right, we've got to pay the mortgage off as quickly as we can, and this is our plan. And it was a 6-year plan to pay the mortgage off on our house in England. And we sat down and went through this thing and had a thermometer, and we coloured in little different bits to move through this process. And then one day I was up early, I was just sorting out some papers, and I looked and I saw like Susan had £10,000 on her credit card, which was over $20,000 at the time with the exchange rate. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like completely the opposite of what we're going to be doing. So I said to her, like, what are you doing? What's going on? We agreed that we're going to pay off the mortgage. And she said, we didn't agree. You told me that this was our plan, but all I heard was we're going to be like struggling and scraping by for the next 6 years. I didn't sign up to that at all. And so I realized that if we were going to meet this goal, that all of us had to kind of get on board. The whole family had to get behind this. And so I realized I had to earn more money, really, than Susan was able to spend. Now, she heard about this and she said, I am up to the challenge. I'm up to the challenge. And at one point, she actually, her credit card that she was using for buying all her shoes and everything, her credit card got stolen. And so she told me about this, and I thought, oh dear, I better report this. And I thought, actually, looking at the bills coming in, the guy that stole it was spending less as she was. So I let it run. I'm saving money all the time that we don't report it. Now, depending on the situation, you may be able to get jokes in like that to kind of fit with what it is that you're talking about. You've got a serious point, and it's a little bit of a detour to include these jokes, but maybe it makes the audience laugh. Maybe it shows your personality a little bit, your sense of humor, and helps you connect with them. So you decide. If you're speaking all day, doing a one-day seminar, then there's going to be different points where it's more informal and it's going to be more appropriate just to include little things. But if you're speaking for just 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes, then every second is precious, and you can't afford to spend too much time off point for what it is that why they've come there. So humor is the oil in the wheels of education. Humor facilitates the process. It's not the end goal, if that makes sense. Most of the time, 9 times out of 10. So the first thing I think we've got to realize is being funny is hard work. Being funny is serious business. It takes a lot of effort. It's harder to tell jokes than it is to be a speaker. Now, someone like John is great at both, so you have an amazing experience. He's as funny as some of the world's best comedians, but he's also sharing life-changing principles at the same time. And that massively increases his value. In fact, all great speakers, when you look at the top paid speakers, unless they're celebrities, different rules apply to them. But the best speakers tend to use humor very, very effectively. John is very funny, but almost all of it is on point. So I think we want to realize, first of all, Steve Harvey says you're probably not funny. You're not funny. But you can learn to use humor still to help you get your message across to people and help you connect with people. But realize that it is serious business. It's work. What did Edison say about genius? Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Well, I think it's the same with trying to find a way to use humor in a way that works for you and your message for your audience when you speak. So you're not a comedian, but we can learn from some of the approaches of comedians. Now, just think about how hard a professional comedian works to put together a 40-minute set. The average professional comedian takes a year, 12 months to develop 40 minutes of reliable material like that. A year for 40 minutes. That's a long time, isn't it? People often ask me, how long should I spend for a 20-minute presentation? If I'm going to speak for 20 minutes, how long should I spend preparing? And a stock answer that people will often share is an hour a minute. If you're going to speak for 20 minutes, you should prepare for 20 hours, an hour a minute to deliver something. I think sometimes it can be a lot less than that if you're reusing some of your best bits of material, and it can be a lot longer than that if you're putting together a new talk. There's a great deal of work that needs to go into that. The reason it takes comedians so long is they need to go out and test it in front of a live audience and then fine-tune it. And we need to do that when we're speaking as well. We need feedback from a live audience. There's a lot we can do on our own, but we need feedback from an audience as well. John calls this process walking the dog. So he'll put together something that he thinks is going to work, and then he'll take it out and see what other people think of it, how people respond to it. So realize, first of all, I think that being funny is serious business. I don't even like that phrase, being funny, because I don't think you want to try and be funny. I think you want to try and use humor in a way that works for you. Now, even when I say that to people, for most people, it freaks them out. It's bad enough that they need to stand up and speak in front of other people, let alone trying to be funny. And they'll often say, look, I didn't get into this to be a comedian. I want to help people. That's serious business. I want to help people. I know you want to help people. I want to help people too. But we need to realize that the way we help them is perhaps not what we thought it was at the beginning. Some things work better than others. Some approaches are significantly more effective than others. Some approaches are significantly higher value than others. And using humor is one of those right at the very top. So how do we do that then? How do we use humor if we're just starting out? How do we use humor in an effective way? Well, I think an enormous shift here, first of all, is to understand that it's not about the information. It's not about the information that you're sharing. It is about the information, but it's not all about the information. The information is the easiest bit. The teaching, whatever pearls of wisdom you're going to share, that's the easiest bit. Putting it together in an experience that is really going to help your audience is the most difficult bit. Because the sad truth is, we want to learn, but we hate to be taught. We want to kind of learn, but we don't like being taught. And people will pay a lot more for entertainment than they will for education. Sad but true. Just look how much people spend on entertainment systems and TVs and audio systems in their homes compared to libraries, as a simple example. Now, when we understand this and we buy into this and we accept this, then we can work with it. Then we can improve. Knowing what's important, then we can work on the important things. Now, are there some exceptions to this, that people will pay more for entertainment than they will for education? Of course there are. 9 times out of 10, let's just say generally speaking, for you probably in your topic and your audiences, they'd rather enjoy themselves while they're learning. So make it easy for them. Make it easy. Give them the best of both worlds. So 9 times out of 10, creating an enjoyable learning experience for your audience is going to help you get your message across and help you influence your audience much more than making it drinking from a fire hydrant of information where you're just blasting everything you know at them. It just doesn't work. Less is more. Less is more. So we're going to look at 6 approaches to using humor. A little bit goes a long way, remember. If you just use 1 or 2 of these things, it's going to make a big difference. So anything you can do is really going to help with using humor. Okay, so it's definitely worth working at, thinking about, spending some time on, making it important. You imagine like a 40-minute academic lecture where it's all about the information that's being shared in a specific time window. It's really dull, isn't it? It's really tricky to stay focused, even if you're interested. If you can lighten up a little bit, if you can include some humor, that's going to be a way better experience for the audience than just listening to 40 minutes all the way through. You're going to lose them right at the very beginning, and then they're just going to be struggling to stay awake. So anything you can do makes a big difference. What if you could make them laugh every 10 minutes? You could create that release every 10 minutes. So they're enjoying themselves. You're waking them up every 10 minutes. What a difference that's going to make. That's just 3 laughs in a 40-minute presentation, turns it into something completely different. If you could do that every 5 minutes, oh my goodness, what a difference that's going to make. So start where you are, and anything you do is going to make a big difference. So let's look at how you can get started using humor then, so that you can increase your influence with your audience. How can you do that? We're going to look at 6 approaches, 6 things that are really going to help you do that. But before we do that, let me just tell you a little bit about the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team, because if you're interested in developing your speaking, this really is a no-brainer to check out. So the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team, if you want to be a speaker, trainer, coach, if you're interested in leadership, business building, career development, anything really, there's so much to the program. I'm not going to tell you about all of those things. I just want to encourage you, as you're probably interested in developing your communication skills, which is why you're listening to the Speaker's Edge podcast. The Maxwell method of speaking is one of the best ways that you can do that. I've been working with John on the Maxwell method of speaking since 2010 for many, many years now. It keeps getting better and better. There's nearly 60,000 coaches worldwide in 169 countries, I think it is now. And if you're interested in developing your speaking, you definitely want to check it out. It's no obligation. Just go to maxwellleadership.com/speak. Jump on the call with a program advisor and find out about the program. As I said, it's no obligation. It's no problem if it's not for you, but if it is, you'll be very, very glad that you made that appointment. Okay, let's have a look at step 1 then. How do you get started using humor when you speak? Well, the first thing and the most easiest thing for you to do is have fun yourself. Don't forget to enjoy yourself. Don't forget to enjoy yourself. John says you'd be funnier if you were having fun. If you were enjoying it, we're more likely to enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, then we're probably not going to enjoy it either. If you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders, if you're taking it all so seriously, you want to change the world with the 5-minute presentation that you've got to share with them, it's not realistic. So relieve yourself of that pressure. Lighten up a little bit. If you can just lighten up, don't take yourself so seriously. Don't take this speech so seriously. I'm not saying don't take the audience and their time seriously. Take the audience and their time very seriously. I think you want to treasure every precious second of their time, but don't expect to change their lives forever in the few minutes that you have together. You do the best you can. You prepare, you over-prepare, but then lighten up a little bit. You know your material well, hopefully. It's a lot easier to lighten up and relax if you know your material well. If you don't know your material well, keep practicing, keep working on it, keep internalizing the message. The better you know it, the easier everything gets, including lightening up. So if you know your material well, you know you've got value to add, then you can relax a little bit. You're going to do your best. You're going to do your best. You can't do more than that. And your best is good enough. What was it that that famous speaker years ago said? All you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. As long as you do all you can do. Well, you can only do your best. Your best is good enough. You're going to do the best you can with the time available. Then you can relax and enjoy it. And if you're having fun, there's a much better chance that they're going to have fun. I sometimes laugh with the audience and say, I made a decision a long time ago that at least one person was going to enjoy this presentation today. Me. And hopefully, if I enjoy it, then hopefully other people are going to enjoy it too. So focus on the value that you can add. You know, if you've done your work, if you've done your best, you've got a message that's worth sharing. It's worth their time. You've worked hard to bring value to their time. Now you're going to do the best you can of delivering it. You're going to focus at getting better and better at that process. If you share the same presentation once a week for 10 weeks, the 10th week is going to be better than the first week. So of course you're going to continue to grow, but you do the best where you are right now. And so you know your material well, focus on delivering it, get better and better at that process, and it's okay to relax and enjoy the process a little bit. So you have fun, there's a better chance the audience are going to have fun. So that's the first step. The second step then is to realize that humor is a funny thing sometimes, I think. If we've got a relationship with someone and we like them, we're happier to allow them to amuse us. So connection is like a foundation, not just for influence, it's a foundation for humor as well. If we don't like someone, like, we're not going to laugh no matter what happens, unless they fall over and, do themselves an injury. Then we might find that funny. Laugh at, what's that, Schadenfreude, do they call that, laughing at somebody else's misfortune? But that aside, if they like us, they're more likely to enjoy having fun with us. They're more likely to laugh at our jokes. They're more likely to enjoy themselves in our company. If they don't like us, then they're probably not going to. So connection facilitates their enjoying the experience. Have you ever had the experience of listening to someone you don't like? If there's a comedian that you just find offensive, for example, they're just not funny, are they? And other people that may like them, may have a relationship with them, they may enjoy it. And you're like, why are you laughing at this? It's just, the guy's an idiot. She's just rude. She's just outrageous. There's nothing funny about that. It's not clever. I don't like it. I don't like it. We want to get out of there. We don't want to enjoy it with them because there's no connection. We don't have that connection. So there's a foundation. It's not just about the information or just about the one-liner or the joke or the funny story you're sharing. There's a foundation that can be in place that makes it funnier. And I think connecting is one of those. Connecting lays the foundation for humor. So fertile ground for humor is connecting, us having a relationship. If we feel like we know, like, and trust the person that is speaking to us, we're more likely to let them in. We're more likely to laugh at their jokes, to have fun with them. So expectation comes from that connection, I think. And expectation is a part of humor sometimes as well, isn't it? If we're expecting someone to be funny, we're ready for them to be funny, we're ready to allow them to be funny, then we more easily find them funny. If we're not, if we don't like them, we don't let them in, then we're not gonna find them funny. So the second step is trying to build a connection with them for all influence, including humor. So number 2, connection is a foundation for humor. Number 3 then is collect funny stories. It's easier to share a story that in itself is funny rather than trying to be funny. I don't like the idea of trying to be funny, really. I don't think it's I think it's a stressful way to think about it. You want to try and find a way to use humor in a way that suits you. You don't want to try and be funny. So it's much easier to search for stories, look for stories, be aware of things that are happening around you where the story just inherently is funny, and then you can share the story, and because it's a funny story, the audience are more likely to laugh. That's a lot easier than trying to be a stand-up comedian. Did you hear the one about the bunny with 3 ears? That's, for most people, that's too stressful. So as I said earlier, Steve Harvey says that, you're probably not funny. You're not funny. Most people aren't naturally funny. So we've got to work hard at this to include humor in an appropriate way. So I practice what I preach. I collect ideas or things that I become aware of, funny stories that I remember from the past, funny things that happen that are going on around me. I collect them, I put them in an Excel spreadsheet. I've been using the same Excel spreadsheet for many years, and it just keeps growing with all of these different ideas. And here's a couple of undeveloped ideas from that spreadsheet that I was looking at just before hitting record for this podcast episode. So I used to live in a converted boathouse on the River Thames in England years ago, and so I had a canal boat at the end of the garden. It's like 35-foot narrow boat. You may have seen them, like classical old boat from England, and it's great fun. You only go very slowly, so it's a very kind of calm, relaxed way of life. And me and my friends would often go off overnight, or sometimes for weeks on end, going up and down the rivers and the canals of England. It's great experience, actually. And normally it would consist of planning where the next pub on the on the river was, and we'd stop for lunch, and then we'd do some more chugging along the river and stop for dinner. And so one day I was out with a friend of mine and my 2 dogs, Tom and Billy. Tom was a boxer and Billy was a Bichon cross, one big and one little. And we're on the canal boat. They loved it as well, looking out, seeing people go past. We got to the pub, got off the boat with the dogs, went in the garden, sat down. And so my friend was sitting in the garden with the dogs, and I said, right, you look after the dogs, I'll go and get the beers. And so he said, all right. And I said, make sure you hold on to them, because, Tom sometimes chased after other cats or dogs or anything, squirrels, anything really. He said, yeah, don't worry. And he was not really the sort of person to pay much attention. So I went in, I'm standing at the bar, I'm ordering the drinks. I pick up the drinks after I've been served, and I'm walking out with 2 pints and some crisps to go back into the garden. And as I turn around, I see my 2 dogs flying into the pub, chasing a cat that's just in front of them as it runs around the corner. The dogs come in. My friend had tied their leads together to stop them running off, tied them together. So there's two dogs running with this tight lead between them. And the cat goes flying into the restaurant, through the pub into the restaurant. The dogs go flying into the restaurant. The cat jumps up on the table where two people are eating, and the dogs go one each side, wrap round the table. Everything goes flying. And this cat's kind of looking down at these dogs. And my friend is like coming in behind, like no urgency at all. What's going on? And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? So for me, I don't know what I would do with that story or how I would use it. I don't know what the point would be, but the key is to collect it when you remember it, because this was like 30 years ago or something now, so I remember that. Oh yes, write it down, collect some of the details, and then maybe it's something that I can use at a later point. There's something special about it. I don't know what it would be, how it would be developed, but that doesn't matter. Just collect it for now. So that was one story that made me laugh as I thought about it. Another one, I've never done anything with it so far, by the way. It's just one that I looked at that I thought, that's an amusing story that could maybe go somewhere one day. Another example was one where this was during some lost years after school. I didn't make it to university or college, didn't really want to go, just had this 5 or 6 years after leaving school before getting my first job at 25. And so we would do anything to get jobs. So me and a friend put an advert in the paper: 2 starving mature students desperately seek work, will do absolutely anything, 25 to 35 pounds a day each. That was the advert. We were swamped in different work, all kinds of different things that we were doing. And one of them was inoculating sheep on a farm. The lady who owned the farm would say to us, right, you need to kind of shepherd them into a corner, grab one, hold it, and then I'll inoculate it. Then we let it go the other side of the gate so we know it's done, and then we grab the next one. So we're doing this process, and there was a couple left that we'd got to, and one of them was big, this big kind of, I don't know if it was a ram or not, but it had horns on top of its head, and we had to grab this one, and it was feisty. It didn't want to have this injection, and so we managed to kind of grab hold of it, and my friend Greg had kind of got his back legs, and I grabbed hold of the horns on top of its head, but it was like fighting to get out, and so I put one foot over its head, and then I grabbed hold of the horns like I'm sitting on it, like holding it. And I said, don't worry, I've got him. Now, it was pouring with rain, and I had Wellingtons on. The grass was all wet. Everything was wet. We were soaking wet, and I'm grabbing hold of the horns on top of this sheep's head with my Wellingtons on the floor. And Greg lets go of his hind legs, and this ram or sheep or whatever it was, this beast, like takes off down the field. And so I'm like trying to dig my heels in to stop, but they're just like skidding on the wet grass, and I'm sitting on top of this sheep going flying down the grass. It just, like, the imagery in my mind cracks me up every time I think about it. We had no idea what we were doing. So again, that's an undeveloped story that I've collected. I've got it in Excel. I'll come back to it one day if I think, oh, that will be perfect for. So it's undeveloped. Don't judge how you're going to use it. Don't judge what the point is going to be. Anything funny, collect. If you don't write it down and collect it, you'll forget, and then when you're trying to find a funny story or an amusing story or a story to make a particular point, you won't be able to remember any of them. So you have to collect them and decide later. So here's the secret, really, to sharing those types of stories, funny stories. Number one, you have to collect them. Look for funny stories in your past, look for stories around you, collect them. You have to collect them, and then simply prioritize them. It doesn't need to be a perfect system. It will take you 2 minutes probably to read through your list. If you use Excel like I do or whatever else you like, it will take you just a couple of minutes to read through and remind yourself of the stories, and then you can pick one that you want to work on. So number one, collect stories, put them somewhere and prioritize them very simply. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. Best guess, just 2 minutes. Like, I like that one, and then that one, and then that one. Then you can work on your favorite ones. Real simple. So number one, collect them, put them somewhere and prioritize them. Number two, then, test them. Les Brown says he tests his stories first of all in conversation. I think that's great. Test them in conversation. If you do a lot of speaking, or you do a lot of calls or Facebook Lives or Instagram or Zoom sessions or workshops or wherever you have the opportunity to share things, you can test them. So test them in conversation, test them in front of an audience, and see how they respond to them. So collect them, number one, test them, number two, and then number three, refine them. Initially, they're going to be too long, so you want to make them shorter. Work out What is it that the audience needs to hear from this story in order to get whatever point it is, wherever you're taking us, whatever the destination is? So refine them, retell them, refine them again, get feedback from different audiences, whether it's in conversation or small groups, test audiences or real audiences. Don't test a lot of new material in front of a paying audience. It's likely not to work, and so it's not going to be the best use of their time. You can use a little bit, 1 or 2%, maybe 5% could be new material, but for a paying audience, stick with stuff that gets the job done. So number 1, collect them. Number 2, test them. Number 3, refine them. And then number 4, keep the ones that work. Keep the ones that work. As you work on them, as you test them, you can grade them. Number 1, excellent. This is a really good story. It's a keeper. Number 2, this is good. Number 3, ditch it. It's not going anywhere. And then hopefully you'll have more and more excellent stories that you can use. So real simple. It's a process. Don't judge them right at the beginning as to whether or not they're going to be good enough to use. Collect them, test them, refine them, and then keep the best ones. Simple. Then you might also want to collect other types of amusing things. Public domain stories, I recommend you collect. Public domain jokes. George Bernard Shaw apparently fell out with Winston Churchill years ago, and he wrote to him on the opening night for his new play, and he said, "I'd love it, Winston, if you came to my play. Bring a friend if you have one." And Winston Churchill wrote back saying, "I'm sorry, I'm busy on opening night, but I'll happily come the second night if the play is still running." That was very, very clever. I collected it because I like it. I've never used it. I don't know where I might be able to use it. This is the first time I think I've probably shared that. I don't know. But collect it, then you got the option. Another famous Winston Churchill one, he was a drinker, as many of you will know, and some lady who he'd upset said, "Sir, you are drunk. You are disgustingly drunk." And Winston Churchill apparently said, "Madam, you are ugly. You're disgustingly ugly, but I shall be sober in the morning." It's a bit rude, isn't it? Then there was another one, similar line, another lady who was upset by his drinking and his manners and his approach. And she apparently said to him, "Sir, if you were my husband, I'd poison your coffee." And he said, "Madam, if you were my wife, I would drink it." Very, very clever. I like that. Another one that popped into my mind just when I was jotting down some notes before recording again. It was famous quotations, and I forget who it was, and I didn't have time to try and research it and find it. But someone that was being hanged in London years ago, and they were stepping out onto the scaffold, and he looked at the hangman before he got on, looked at the scaffold and looked at the hangman and said, "Are you sure this is safe?" So little things where you can just you're not going to pretend they're yours, but collect them if you find them amusing, and maybe there's some way that you can reuse them in the future. Collect funny things as they happen to you. Collect funny things you remember. Collect funny things you see elsewhere. Collect funny public domain stories. It's good if you can personalize them as well. That can work very well. So you're using a public domain story, but personalizing it in a way that you're mixing with your own stories. Now, you don't want to try and dupe the audience and pretend that it's yours. I made that mistake years ago, sharing a well-known joke or story that was funny and mixing it with a true story of my own, but just merging the two together to make it a true story right up to the end, but then stealing the punchline from this famous story. And it was funny, and people loved it. People loved it. It really, really went down well. But one day, somebody came up to me after I shared it and said, "I've heard that story before." And I said, "Yeah, I know it's and I didn't really expect people to take it seriously. I thought people would know it was, not entirely true." And he said, and I'm thinking to myself, if you'd lie about that, what else are you lying about? And so now I'm not taking anything that you're saying really seriously. So you might want to think about that. And I thought, do people think that I'm intending that this actually happened? It was a really powerful lesson for me. So then the next time I shared that story, I told the story as it was, got to the punchline, everyone laughed, ha, 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 ha. Then about 15 minutes later in the presentation, I said, I was talking about personal stories, all of the stories I'm sharing with you today are true, and they're all exactly as they happened, with one exception. That story about blah, 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 I took a personal story, a true story, I mixed it with another story, combined them together to make it into a funny joke. So that one I've stretched more than I would consider to be acceptable. I don't want you to think that, that's exactly as it happened without telling you. So that one's not entirely true, a little bit of, comedic license, but all the others exactly as it happened. And it actually worked even more to my favor, because people are like, oh, that's very honest. I like the way that, you know, that you're more trustworthy. So I think mixing well-known stories with stories of your own can work, but you don't want to pretend that they're yours. So number 4 is you don't want to be the hero. You don't want to be the hero. It's not like if you're a stand-up comedian and you can tackle hecklers and you can try and outsmart them and you can be mean to people, because it doesn't serve you for influence. That's okay for stand-up in a bar where everyone's drinking or whatever. It's a different setting, but not for a professional speaker. So you don't want to tackle the audience. You don't want to set yourself up as the hero. It's not about you being better than everyone else or funnier than everyone else. It's about you trying to help them. Remember, we're using humor as a tool to meet the ends of influence, to actually help people, not to beat them down into submission. So we have to accept, just like connecting that we talked about several weeks back, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about them. It's always about them. So don't make fun of the people in the audience that you want to connect with. It's going to alienate them. I'll give you a simple example of how easy it is to do this. I heard a joke years ago from a boxer, Ricky Hatton, who did stand-up comedian, and he talked about his wife, and he was sharing a simple story about his wife, and he said, I looked at her and said, babe, I call her babe. Anyone seen that film? Never mind. And then carried on. So like at the time, years ago, the film Babe, which is about a pig, and the picture of the poster is a big pig with Babe written underneath it. So when you see anyone seen that film Babe, you have a picture of a pig. He's talking about his wife. He's a boxer. He's doing stand-up comedy. It's okay. And people would chuckle and then he'd move on. So I used it exactly the same. I call her Babe, talking about my wife. Anyone seen that film? Never mind, and moved on. And the feeling in the audience is like, oh, he's trying to be smart. He's been mean to his wife. Why would he do that? That doesn't, Matt, I don't like him anymore. I don't. This is, and you've lost them. So being a professional speaker is different from being a stand-up comedian. It's not like down the pub with your mates or in a bar or whatever. This is, you're a professional and you're trying to influence people. So you don't want to make fun of them, and you don't want to make fun. The only people you want to make fun of, or the only person you want to make fun of, is yourself. If you want to pick on yourself, that's okay. Self-deprecating humor can work, but don't pick on anyone else, because it makes you look like you're trying to be a wise guy. So don't pick on other people. Don't make fun of other people. It's not worth it just for a cheap laugh. Build them up and make them feel good about themselves. Don't tear them down and make them feel bad about themselves. Something else that I learned as well years ago, I used to have a story about, and it was a true story. It was a true story, but it was about people, when I started getting into personal growth, people looking at me and saying, you've changed, you've definitely changed. And I had changed. I've really changed significantly from what I used to be like years ago, significantly. And one of the things was I lost a lot of weight. And so people would say, what's the secret to that? What's the secret to losing weight? And I said, well, there's really no secret to it at all. All you do is drink 10 pints of beer every day for 10 years and then just stop. And you'll find that the weight just falls off. It's a miracle. And so this was a joke that I'd heard a comedian share, and it actually happened to be true for me. And so I could share this, and it was funny, and it always got a laugh. But then I start thinking about, like, if in any audience there's going to be people who are overweight, and does that make them feel good if I'm talking about being overweight and drinking it? So it's light and it's fun, but maybe it makes them feel uncomfortable. So I thought, what? It's not worth the risk. I don't want people to feel uncomfortable. I want them to feel loved and accepted and valued. And so I stopped using that almost entirely. And in fact, I can't even remember the last time I shared that story now. So if it's going to be a poking fun, we want it to be ourselves, but we don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable in the process. So self-deprecating humor. John does this really, really well, doesn't he? Where we're poking fun at ourselves in an appropriate way that lets the audience know we're not taking ourselves too seriously. We're not pretending we're better than them. In fact, we're showing our humanness. And if we can laugh at ourselves, I think it's very endearing, isn't it? Don't take yourself so seriously. Now, the key when we're talking about, as a professional speaker, when we're talking about influence, is we don't want to poke fun at ourselves in the area where we're hoping to influence people. So it needs to be in a different area, or ideally, remember, a few episodes back, we were talking about, before you teach anything, you want to ask yourself this simple question: where did I learn this? Where did I learn this? So self-deprecating humor linked to your past, where you've made comical mistakes or stupid mistakes, which is how you've learned your expertise, that can work really, really well. So if you're going to make fun of yourself, if you're going to laugh at yourself, poke fun at yourself it needs to be in a different area to your expertise. You can't be like, oh, I'm useless at this, aren't I? Do you want to buy my program? No, I'm not going to buy your program. You're useless at this. You told me yourself. I see it now. But it can be in that area years ago where you've overcome some of those things and you've learned then how to do it. And now you're an expert in that area. And now you're helping other people when they're in the situation where you were. So ideally, it needs to be in the past for the thing of your expertise, because that's how you got it. Comically. Does that make sense? It's a powerful way of building credibility with your audience and making them laugh at the same time. So the fifth one is the surprise storyline. So there's a punchline, but because it's unexpected, then sometimes it can be much funnier. So if there is an expectation, if we're expecting something to be funny, then that really can prime the pump. But if we're not expecting something to be funny, but we're happy to laugh if it is, then it can be 10 times funnier just because it's unexpected. And John uses this a lot. He has a wonderful story about cutting the cord for his granddaughter, and then he drops in this funny one-liner in the middle of this really tender moment, and it's much funnier than it would have been if we were expecting it. So if it's unexpected, that can really work, the surprise storyline. But expectation also can help make things funny, as we looked at when we were talking about connecting and building the relationship. The two are similar in some way. So if we're expecting someone to be funny, if Steve Harvey was here, he could do almost anything and we'd laugh, wouldn't we? John's great at facial expressions too. He starts to make a facial expression and we can't help ourselves. We're expecting him to be funny, and so when he shows signs of being funny, we start laughing, we start enjoying it. We feel free to do that. But also if it's a real tender moment and something catches us by surprise, we can burst out laughing despite ourselves, and we end up enjoying it more. So the surprise storyline is great for grabbing attention. It's great for humor as well. I went through my Excel spreadsheet before the call, as I said. I looked for the funniest punchlines that I've got from my stories by my own estimation. 17 different punchlines from stories that I looked at in order of priority, and 13 of the top 17. In fact, the first 13 of the 17, they were all utilizing the surprise storyline for humor. So something that we're not expected makes it funnier. The funniest story I've ever shared was a 6-minute story. In fact, I've shared it a great deal. I haven't shared it for a while, actually. But it's a story about a very bizarre situation on my bachelor weekend in Brighton. It's a 6-minute story, and the best audience response that I had recorded, because you can count the laughs, was about 28 house laughs, belly laughs, 28 humor payoffs, royal payoffs, if you like, in 6 minutes. So that's getting on for about 5 payoffs a minute, which is really good, actually. So that was a funny story. None of those were really, maybe 1 or 2 of them actually thinking about it when the policeman arrives. It's unexpected for the situation I'm in. So 1 or 2 were surprise storyline, but most of them is just this very odd situation and a very odd unfolding of events, which, because there's an expectation, it's because it's so odd, I'm basically handcuffed naked to the railings in the middle of the day. It seems to get funnier and funnier as get on, or people feel free to laugh. And so there's an expectation that goes with that one. So that one is minimally utilizing the surprise storyline, the surprise punchline. And it, I think is, the funniest story that I've shared. But all of the others, the top 13, are all a surprise storyline. So I think just, I'm comfortable with that. It's not me trying to be funny. It's just me sharing something, and it's unexpected and seems to work well. When John is speaking and he's on a roll, he's getting 6-10 laughs per minute, like endlessly. It's almost exhausting, isn't it? Steve Harvey said that's the mark of world-class comedy. A house laugh, belly laugh, where 85% of the audience is laughing 3 to 5 times per minute. So that's average every 15 seconds, a belly laugh for 90 minutes non-stop. That's world-class humor. World-class humor. So expectation, if we're expecting someone to be funny, sometimes that makes it funny. And if we're not expecting humor to be there and it is there, unexpected humor sometimes can be funnier as well. All right, the last one then, number 6. I think this is great advice. Reuse your best bits. Reuse your best bits. If you've got jokes that work, if you've got stories that work, reuse them with different audiences. If it's a new audience, reuse your best bits. Don't recreate material just because you want to be creative for a particular audience. Reuse your best bits if you possibly can. Great advice. Change your audience, not your act. Change your audience, not your act. It's a lot easier to get a new audience than it is to get a new act, because an act seems to make it, you know, a little frivolous. It's a showbiz expression, but when you're a professional speaker, don't think of it as an act perhaps, but you are reusing your best bits. Reusing your best bits. So here's a few don't do. So there's 6 things that I think you should do. Here's a few things that I don't think you should do. Don't start out with a joke. Don't start out with a joke. You're at the pub, you're in the bar, you hear a joke with your friends, you're like, oh, that's so good. I'm going to include that as a professional speaker in front of this audience. It's way too risky, way too risky. If you've used it before, if you've tested it like that and it works well and you know it gets a good response, then that's different. You know, if you've experienced it working time and time again and you can rely on it, then, you know, maybe it's a safe way to start out. But you don't want to risk, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. You don't want it to be like tumbleweed when you share something that's just not funny, or people aren't ready, or didn't hear properly, or what? And it makes you feel awkward and then feel awkward, and that's their first impression. So too risky. Don't start out with a joke unless you know from experience it's going to work. Don't use risky humor. My wife told me this over and over and over again. Susan would say, you cannot use that joke in front of a professional audience. I'm like, no, it'll be fine. It's fine. And she's like, no, it's not. And I would do it anyway. And people would be like, what are you doing? You just cannot. Now I cringe looking back. But at the time I thought it was funny to me, and so I thought it would be funny to them. It's not. What's funny with you and your friends is not necessarily what is going to work in a professional setting. So if you're asking yourself, should I use this or should I not? Or if people are saying, you're not sure you want to use that, why take the risk? Don't use it. If you're asking, should I use it? Don't use it. Use something else. There's too much downside and not enough upside. So don't use risky humor. Don't risk new jokes with a paying audience, I've already said, unless maybe if you're very resilient because you can deal with it. You know, you make a joke and it doesn't work, and you can say, oh, tough crowd, you know, taxi, I mean, get me out of here. If you can deal with it, and, you know, maybe, but still, for most people, I wouldn't do that. If you're used to sharing jokes and they bomb, then if you can handle it, it can be funnier than them actually working. But I think it's not for the faint-hearted, it's not for the inexperienced. So don't risk jokes with paying audiences, certainly. I wouldn't risk jokes with any audience. Test it first of all and try and make sure that it works. And then maybe don't share your best material, your best jokes, your best stories all over the place. Save them for your paying audiences. Save them. Keep your powder dry. So you decide. I think you want to put your best stuff in the shop window as a speaker a lot of the time, but maybe you want to save. If you've got some stories that you use in your signature story, in your keynote, maybe you don't want them everywhere, so that if you're speaking to an audience, they've watched you on YouTube, they've watched you on the internet, and they've already seen your jokes. It's not going to have such a good effect. So you decide. It's not definitely, but maybe don't share your best stuff all over the place if you're keeping them for your keynote. So a few don'ts. Don't start out with a joke. Don't use risky humor. Don't risk a new joke for a paying audience. Don't use your best material all over the place. Maybe save it for your keynotes. And then 6 things that you should do. Have fun. If you're enjoying it, they're more likely to enjoy it. Remember that connection is the foundation for influence. It's also a foundation for humor. Collecting funny stories and telling funny stories is a lot easier than trying to be funny. Don't be the hero. It's not about you. It's about them. Don't exclude people. Don't make people feel uncomfortable. Number 5, expectation can make things funnier, and surprise, unexpectation, can make things funnier. And number 6, reuse your best bits. When you find things that work, reuse them. Reuse them. If it's a different audience, keep reusing your best bits, and they'll keep getting better and better and better. Remember, success doesn't happen in a day. It happens day by day. John Maxwell's The Law of Process. It's worth sticking at humor because it can make a big difference, and you're not going to get there overnight. It's going to take time. So you may start out feeling hopeless with humor. This is not for you. Step 1. Step 2, maybe you can just lighten up a little bit. Step 3, maybe now it's, it's not really funny, but it's pithy. It's pithy. Number 4, maybe it's witty. It's not like side-splittingly hilarious, but it's witty. Maybe then you move to, so random or peculiar that it makes people chuckle. Number 6, maybe you move up to you're having fun, they're starting to have fun with you. Number 7, now they're finding it funny. Number 8, now they're finding it very funny. Number 9, now they're finding it hilarious. Number 10, you're a world-class comedian as a professional speaker. So think of it in degrees like that, maybe 10 steps of working towards it little by little. Every little thing you do makes a difference. And it's worth it. It's worth it because if your audience can enjoy themselves while learning from you, your value goes up significantly. That's it for this week. Don't forget to download our companion resources. Just go to maxwellleadership.com/The Speaker's Edge. Remember, communication is one of those skills that everyone wants to spend time on. It will do more for you than any other skill you can develop, and it is a learnable skill. So keep learning, learn to master your message, and inspire your audience every time you speak. Thanks for listening today. Look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Take care. Lots of love. Bye-bye.